real treat this morning. I've been joined by Johnny Corbett to talk about your career today. Johnny, thank you very much for giving up your time.
Thank you for having me, Susie.
Pleasure, pleasure. Um, so we'll go through the questions, but just a brief context that I'm going to run through for people who, if there's anyone listening who may not be familiar with your background, because you wear many hats and are an incredibly busy person. So you're a Marketing Week columnist. You've got your own consultancy, Which Way Up. You're a chief strategy officer, which is what we've been chatting about with Glow London. And also you are marketing capability builder with LockSmith. So you've got a number of different roles that you play. But the bit that I thought was really interesting, I know you'll talk more on this, is the kind of the thread or the driver, whichever way you want to look at it, is about putting marketing on the map as that engine for growth. That is something that I talk about a lot as well. So I'm a big believer in that too. But prior to doing your sort of portfolio career, you had 20 years in really senior brand roles with a
Yeah.
really diverse group of businesses, consumer brands, financial services. I know you work for Dulux, there's a kind of wonderful household brand. So very, premium brand experience, and you're now offering this wealth of insight to a variety of companies, and you were explaining about that connection between brand and culture to help teams thrive. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck in. Would you be so kind to kind of start us off by explaining a bit more about your career journey,
Yeah.
and I guess that the pivotal decisions that then have accelerated you on, because people will be looking thinking, wow, how do I emulate that, how do I do what you've done?
Yes. It's funny. So when you give that little summary, it sounds like a very logical thread and a sort of oh, you did lots of work in big business and then you moved into consultancy. It didn't feel like didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like that at all. And your summary is exactly that. So I spent 15, 20 years in big corporate worlds. So I was at Diageo for a long time, Dulux for a long time, with a sort of bit of bird's eye in the middle. So booze, fish fingers, and paint. I never managed to draw a thread through that, other than
No, I
yeah.
can't do one either, I'm afraid.
No, well, I mean, the thread that runs through it and that has carried on is the understanding that brands build businesses,
Yeah.
and they were very much the sort of the driver of those organizations in different ways and in different organizations. That bit of the career was relatively linear, and then it was sort of explosively tangential. I sort of went, okay, actually, I wanted to explore different things, and I always thought there was a role for me, sort of that wasn't necessarily within the corporate structure, and the opportunity came along for me to explore that. And consultancy has been sort of even more diverse. I mean, I've worked with political organizations, with tech startups, financial services, all sorts. But all under that sort of the banner of trying to work out what it takes for marketing to really drive organizations forwards, because that was the thing which I was sort of brought up on, starting at
Yeah.
Diageo. We sort of, the brands set the strategy. We said, right, this is where we're going to be going in 3 years. That brand exploration sort of rolled up to, this is the way the organization works. And there was a sort of a real, there was just a mutual respect between all the different departments, that the brands had a massive role to play in how this all worked. And then when I stepped out of that corporate world, it becomes really clear really quickly that not every business sort of thinks like that. And actually, over the past sort of 5, 10 years, that sort of got even worse. And in lots of places now, when I talk about putting marketing in there as a driving force of business performance, people will often go, but what role does marketing have to play in that? Because they mistake it for advertising and communications rather than bringing the customer into the business and using it to make a difference. Um, so that's been the thread that's run through all of it. Marketing has a critical role to play in driving businesses, but the lovely linear way that you paint it in your introduction is totally different to how it's either been or how it's felt actually.
And I'm really fascinated. I've been speaking a lot about what we're seeing when we're meeting for briefings is
Mm.
a real shift in thinking that marketing will be this engine for growth. We're going to see structural changes. I'm curious to see what you're seeing in terms of the conversations you've been having. Are you seeing that positive change coming through?
Uh, yes, I am, but then I would because um, that's the conversation that I try to have with people, and because of how I sort of position my own consultancy, because of the work that I do with people like Glow and Locksmith, I
Mm.
tend to work with people who are sort of going, how do we do this? How do we make marketing more of a driving force? How do we knit brands into the cultural fabric of a business? So uh, I often feel, oh, this is all moving in the right direction. We're having lots of conversations about marketing as a growth driver. But then I would also see stuff out in the world on LinkedIn in
Yeah,
publications and you sort of go, okay, there's still an awful damn it. My small sort of bubble of the world is great and exciting because I try to talk to people about what I'm passionate about, and hopefully people then come and talk to me about it. Outside of that is a whole world where I think
right.
marketing is still very sort of misunderstood within business, and there's a lot of opportunity being missed because of that.
Yes, I do think we're on a positive change. I think we'll see more positive change in that direction this year than we might have done in the
Mm.
last sort of 5, 10 years, which is good, being driven by a number of factors. But I think 2026 will be an interesting year to watch how this all develops.
Yeah, I think so. I think that you never know what it is that's going to be the big thing that shifts things forward. I think that I mean, internet and AI, either the sort of the easy, either sort of sticks to
Yeah,
beat things with, or sort of accelerators to pay attention to. I actually think that one of the consequences of the big sort of AI shift is that brands are going to start to become even more important than they were before because the fragmentation of where people are living their lives, where they're coming into contact with brands, the number of different places you can buy things, that inconsistency in terms of how the world now operates
yeah.
lends itself to the consistency that brands bring to everything on those journeys. And yes, I feel positive about that. It does feel like that those conversations are becoming more common and more frequent. My hope is that that can then feed its way into business direction. Marketers have always been quite optimistic about the role for marketing and brands, making that change within businesses and marketing being seen as the driver of that change.
Yeah.
That's often quite a different thing.
We're certainly seeing brand briefs coming back through.
Right.
When I say back through, I mean it's been a long, long time since we've
Mm.
had briefs where the core of it sits around brand,
Yeah.
and that has shifted just in the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a real positive sign. And you were saying about where brands have invested or under invested in brand. Ultimately there's a time lag and it has an impact on revenue. So I think that'll be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah.
Ask you just a bit about the kind of the portfolio career sort of setup that
Mm.
you've got now. There's a number of people I know listening to this that will be thinking, I fancy this as my next move into kind of portfolio career. How, you said it wasn't as linear and kind of shiny and polished as I made it sound, but how, what kind of process did you go through evaluating what that would look like, whether a project or a business was going to be the right fit for you? Kind of how did you make that transition?
Uh, So there's what I think the truthful and honest answer is, and then there's what I think the helpful answer is for for people listening. So I think the honest answer is that my brain just did what human brains do and sort of and connected, or maybe my brain did anyway, based on the experience that I'd had, what I'd seen in the world, the signals that I was getting, my sort of sense of where I was going to be best placed, just sort of reached a conclusion in my head that went, do you know what, this is probably the right decision now. I'd always had inklings. I'd seen other people doing consultancy stuff. You talk about, looking at people and sort of going, oh, that looks like an interesting thing. I'd often done that. And it just got to the stage where that thinking process and opportunity came together. And so I went, okay, fine. I'm going to go out and sort of set up my own consultancy and start working in that space. And I'll see what'll happen. And it's been just a sort of a development process to where I am at the moment, sort of going, actually, marketing that drives business is the thing that I really am excited about, that my
Yeah.
experience lends itself towards. So that's the sort of a culmination point of just a lot of sort of thoughts going on in the background. And as I say, that's, I think, largely how lots of human decisions are made, especially in the marketing world. So the brand and marketing people listening to this will go, oh, that's the same as how people go about buying stuff and making buying decisions.
Yeah.
So that's what I think actually is happening underneath the surface of everything.
So like a passion-driven decision in terms of where your strengths were, what really felt attractive to you.
Yeah, subconscious heuristics, whatever you want to call it. In the end, the drive and the itch just got too much that I went, okay, now's the time to go and do it. The slightly more, if I try to unpack it a little bit and go, right, how do I make these decisions and what feels right and wrong? Being really clear on what my experience is and what I'm good at and what it lends itself to. I'm a marketer, I'm a brand builder. I operate at the sort of level of understanding of what the role is for marketing and brand building within an organization. I'm a collaborator and an enthusiast. I work well with things like honesty and transparency and openness. So with those sort of criteria, it becomes quite easy to see quite quickly whether a project or a role or sort of an opportunity fits within that. Because if it's in the weeds of the sort of implementation and campaign activation, that's great. I can work with that and have done a lot with that, but that's not my forte. I'm good at working out how that fits into the bigger overall picture. If it says we think there's a role for marketing which is bigger and better than the one we've got at the moment within our business, but we don't know what to do with it, I go, great. That's the sort of thing which I really like. So it's probably pretty simple. Can I do it? Am I good at it? Will it be the sort of thing where if I'm involved, that sort of energy that I bring will be sort of appreciated? And if those things are there, then it's usually interesting. I think the other criteria is will it be difficult in a way which I really enjoy the difficulty of? That I've learned from a previous boss. I really enjoy difficult jobs when I enjoy the things that I find really difficult in them. There's loads of stuff that I do which is really difficult, and I really don't enjoy the difficulty of it. But I think if you can find the thing which is really difficult and challenging, but you really enjoy the difficulty in.
And what would that be for you? So what would an example be of a
Uh,
challenging thing that you thrive upon?
I mean, what is the actual role for marketing within this organization? How do we position this brand in a way which makes sense to people out there and to people within the business, without using fluff and jargon and excessive words and 10-page PowerPoint decks? What is it which is causing this team of brilliant, experienced people not to function properly? Those are big, difficult challenges. But I
Yeah.
look at them and go, okay, but that's what I do. I mean, I don't have the solution for you now, but we can work this out because we have done before, and there's real value in trying to work it out. And then there are loads of things like nitty-gritty, detail, executional stuff where the difficulty involved in that. You can see me. I can feel myself physically going, yeah, no, I'm not good at that. Please don't let me
Those
near
are your
that.
energy drivers, aren't they? The things
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and you've got really clear awareness, and you've spoken about your kind of super strengths within that as well. In terms, if you think back on your career now, Johnny, what approach do you think you have taken to continuing to build upon your skills and invest in yourself? Because I think from a career point of view, it's really important, but often people go, that's great, Susie, but how do I do that?
Yeah, yeah. And I totally agree. Part of that has just been driven by this desire to get new experiences and continue to sort of pressure test the understanding of marketing that I've got and how it applies to different places and spaces. Um, so that learning process has sort of been exacerbated by my desire to move into different sectors, try different
Yeah.
things, work out where the theory I've learned over here might be applied to a new business. That in itself is quite an active learning process because it means I don't have the sort of the either assumption, either sort of the I don't have the understanding of the categories that I necessarily move into, and therefore need to learn all of that and then work out how marketing applies to it. So some of it is just sort of either luck, judgment, or foolishness of constantly jumping into new things. That brings with it sort of a learning experience. Um, uh, I've reading sort of voraciously is a big part of it. There's a wonderful amount of information out there that you can learn from, and whether it's books or LinkedIn or papers or
Yeah.
walk, uh, access to that information has never been greater, and there's and I've now just got the experience to sort of know what good looks like in terms of thought leadership and what stuff is just worth ignoring. Um, there's a lot of that that goes on. Another big driver of it, frankly, is not having that much confidence in my own ability
Mhm.
or strength. I probably got more expertise and knowledge than I think I do, but I will often sort of go, okay, I think I probably need to read up on this before I really start, um, applying it and thinking about it. Um, so I think that's happened quite a lot. I've sort of gone, oh, I really need to know about this before I can credibly stand up and talk about it. That's probably just my lack of confidence, but that's led me to read more than perhaps I needed to.
And on a practical level, if you were kind of putting that into practical advice for someone who might be a senior brand manager with kind of career aspirations, to your point, there's a lot of resource, a lot of which is free. Where's their best starting point? Is it listening to industry led podcasts? Kind of what are the kind of basic foundations they could consider to get them started on this idea of skill building and self-investment?
Yeah. Really good understanding of how they learn themselves and learn best. Um, I'm not a great podcast listener. When I go walking, that's time for me to unpack what's in my brain and to the dog gets to hear a lot of sort of thoughts as I talk to them. I can't the podcasts I find really difficult. Some people love them. So I think understanding how you absorb information best and how you
Yeah.
learn is really important. Um, Foundational training, lots of people don't have any. I think something like only 25% of marketers have actually got any sort of formal grounding in how to do marketing well, either from their business or from external people. And finding finding some of that just foundational training is really important. You need to learn how then to apply that to business, and that's a slightly different skill set. Um, but formal training programs, things like the Mark Ritson Mini MBA, finding a role within a business that really values it and has a way of doing marketing, that is going to train you on the job. Like that formal foundational training is really important. Um, and then also just understanding that marketing as a discipline is really, really broad. For whatever your brain type, there is a brilliant place for you in the marketing world somewhere. Um, working out working out which bit of the marketing world really appeals to you and to the way that you think and to the value that you can add. Um, you know, it's that self-exploration is I think the biggest part of the learning process, because once you've got that, then you can work out where you know the rabbit holes to dive down and really indulge the knowledge that you want to pick up to do it
You're
properly.
so right. Understanding one's unique learning style is actually the key to success with all of that.
Mm.
Thank you. That was a brilliant answer. Um, Couple of final ones. So, who or what's been the biggest influence in shaping your leadership style?
Uh, there have been so many different people over the course of my career whose sort of advice I carry around in my head and will often come out when I'm sort of doing projects or talking to people. It's quite hard to pick any one specific person. Um, it was probably Anne-Maria Riordan, who she was my marketing director when I was at Dulux and was there when I made that shift from being a marketer known for doing marketing things to starting to lead a big team and uh, and manage that shift. And I just remember having a conversation with her. I was having a just a difficult time understanding why things weren't happening, how things were going. She just said, "This is the most difficult bit of your career because you're up until this point, your successes have been based on the stuff that you've done, the stuff you've executed, the campaigns that have been run, the results that you've got, and." Now the next stage of your career is based on skills that you haven't learned yet. It's about your ability to manage teams and work with your peers in a constructive way and work out how you influence a leadership team. Um, and I thought I knew that, but she just put it in a way which just sort of said, "This is where you are at the moment." So I think that was a real sort of pivotal moment, and uh, that I think was the real sort of accelerator to understanding how I want to operate, how I want to work. Um, I still nowhere. I have no idea what I'm going to be when I grow up, Susie. But I think that
Still
was
figuring
probably
that one out.
yes. But I think that was the sort of the moment. And once you see that, you then start to see the sort of the challenge that is for people stepping into leadership roles. And I think we're quite bad at it as an industry, helping people when they move from being brilliant marketers to being brilliant leaders. Like you're not alone. Loads of people have done it, but you
Yeah.
need to ask really different questions to work out how to get that support on the journey because it's a totally different skill set that you start to pick up.
And in terms of the advice for someone who's about to go through that change that you made into that leadership
Mm.
role, is it about asking advice from people around, what other learnings came out of it that you would share with others, if someone's about to step into their first big leadership role?
Yeah. Firstly, understand that shift that you're making. You know, what's got you here is not what's going to get you there. And uh, appreciate that you've been put in that role because people have seen that leadership potential in you. You know, it's often easy to think, right, I've gone into this role and I've got here because of the things I've done and the things I've executed. So I'm going to do more of that and bigger and better. And that's what people want because that's how I've landed here. That's usually not the way it works. Usually people have gone, you know, I'm looking for someone in a leadership role who's going to be able to manage this team, change the business, drive things forward. You know, yes, this person's done brilliant marketing things. We think they'd be a really good leader, actually. Then you get to that point, like understanding that you need to learn a different way of doing things. That shift is really important to understand. Um, Ask people about it, but recognize the questions you're asking are very, very different questions. Um, the questions you need to ask in terms of leadership are things about your leadership style. You know, how did you get through this? How did you learn about your ability to lead in the right way? If you carry on asking questions like, how could we do better with our marketing? Why are these results moving in the wrong direction? Those are the wrong sorts of questions. Um, but most leaders who've gone through that change and done it well and are respected for it really want to help people who are trying to make that change because we've all seen and sort of experienced how difficult it is to do.
They've all felt it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then my final one for you, please, if I may, Johnny,
Mm.
is a practical habit that you're that you're able to share with us that enables the success, you know, that people listening could adopt for themselves? I know that you know, you've got this big portfolio career. Kind of what's that practical habit that you do on a daily or weekly basis that may help others?
The absolute vital importance of doing nothing. Like we live in an always on world, and we're always connected. You know, these things are there the whole time. You and I are in our own respective houses, and yet we are in a meeting, and you can have a meeting with anyone anywhere in the world. And problems are big and they're difficult, and that the world is volatile. And yet we now know that all the science says that actually stopping for a while, staring out of the window, going for a walk. If you spend 10, 15 minutes looking, staring out of your window, looking at trees and nature, it actually grows your brain, and we don't do that anywhere near enough. We think of ourselves as business people and marketers and consultants, and we're on a rock floating through space. The sun, we go around the sun, and the air moves and the birds sing. Like, connecting with that, just doing nothing and pausing, and stepping off the hamster wheel for a while is hugely valuable.
Could not agree more. Johnny, thank you. Fantastic answers. Greatly appreciate your time. I know everyone's going to love listening to that.
Super.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.